Hey guys, Romanian Reaper here. So as you can see, I'm outside the cinema, about to be changed for good. Yeah, I'm about to head in to see Wicked for good. Really looking forward to this. Obviously, this is the second half of the story. Really enjoyed part one, a lot more than I was expecting to, so I'm looking forward to seeing how they conclude it. Although I keep hearing the second act, which this is based on, is the weaker half, but I'm still hoping this delivers a satisfying conclusion to the whole story. Got my fingers crossed. The only way to find out is to head in, get some snacks, and get seated for Wicked for good. I'm time to go get that Wicked combo. See you on the other side. So I've got my popcorn here and a Coca-Cola in the Wicked Witch combo, ready to see the conclusion of the Wicked story. So, Wicked for good. I am back from seeing it. This is once again directed by Jon M. Chu, and is of course adapted from the stage show of the same name, itself based on a novel by Gregory Maguire. This time around they are adapting the second act of the show, and as someone who's never seen the stage show, the consensus I keep hearing is that the second act is the weaker one. But still, I enjoyed part one a lot more than I was expecting to. It was quite a majestic scale production, grand scale sets, and just kind of got swept up in the world that it built. So even with the second act status as the weaker one, I still had hope that they would be able to deliver some more of that magic. Especially since this time around it looked like they'd be tying in more into the original Wizard of Oz film. But does this second half actually deliver a satisfying conclusion to the story? Well, let's find out. So in the film, Elphaba is now known and feared across Oz as the Wicked Witch of the West, as the people of Oz are now united in their hatred of their supposed common enemy. Meanwhile, Elphaba is actually on a mission to expose the Wizard of Oz as a liar and a fraud. However, caught in the middle of her fight is Glinda, now known across Oz as Glinda the Good. The pair of them are soon forced to grapple with their newfound public images and their past friendship. Once again, this story is all totally new to me. I am coming to this from a fresh perspective. And saying that now, having seen For Good, I definitely do understand why Act 2 is seen as the weaker portion of the show. Don't get me wrong, I still did enjoy the film for the most part, but it definitely has its issues that I think prevent it from reaching the heights of Part 1. So something I really appreciated here is that it actually leans into a surprisingly dark tone, like much darker than Part 1 anyway. Obviously that one was meant to be a bit lighter, more crowd-pleasing. This one aims to be a bit more emotional and introspective, and on that front it does actually succeed. That's not to say there aren't lighter moments in here, because there are, a particular highlight being a quite amusing slapstick fight scene at one point, which does serve as an effective relief from the darker stuff at play here. But it does go to some quite heavy places, and those actually do land. Those emotional beats do hit very hard. And of course, it's in service of very compelling messages that are relevant to today. Obviously, part 1 explored the silencing of marginalized voices and the, suppression of language, and also the nature of propaganda, how, nothing unites the people more than the idea of a scapegoat, a common enemy to root against. This time around, they do explore a bit more of that critique of the propaganda machine, and in a way, it kind of makes for a thematic companion piece to last week's big release, The Running Man, which I did think was better than a lot of the reviews made out to be. Obviously, that film explored the media as a propaganda tool to sow division and anger in the people. This one explores the idea of how, propaganda narratives, spread amongst the hive mind and, take hold, and how once they do, it can be difficult to break people away from them, and those that try to will just be looked at as the enemy. So some surprisingly quite rich thematic material to chew on here. I will say though, I definitely have some issues with the pacing. It's kind of slow to start out with because obviously it's setting up the story to come and recapping where the characters were and where they are now. So it does take a little while to find its footing. Kind of reminiscent of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning earlier this year, where obviously that opening stretch was heavy on exposition, setting up the story to come and recapping earlier films. It nearly threatened to collapse under its weight until the pieces clicked into place. And I guess that rings true here as well, because once it does click into place, it is all very compelling. Although saying that, there are some beats here that do feel kind of rushed through, including some of the attempts to tie in with the original Wizard of Oz film. Some of these moments definitely could have done with a bit more breathing room to fully explore them, because the film throws some revelations at us and just kind of expects us to accept. So I think definitely the emotional beats and the compelling messages are kind of doing a bit of the heavy lifting here. But where I think the film makes up for that is, of course, in the actual production itself. It is, once again, a dazzling feat. The set design is, of course, on such a grand scale and just, fully immerses us in the world, whether it be the Emerald City or, Munchkin Land, the woods Elphaba resides in, and, of course, the work in progress Yellow Brick Road. It's all on such a sense of scale and just, fully, brings this world dazzlingly to life, paired up with some, solid visual effects that, work very well in enhancing the visual splendor at play here. There's also some noticeable little improvements in the color grading and cinematography. The film does look a little bit more vibrant than last time, and there are some energetic camera flourishes here that John M. Chu brings in, particularly in the musical numbers. And of course, those are a strong suit. Obviously, a lot of the best songs were in part one, but there are good ones here, like No Good Deed, and of course the film's title song, For Good. There are also some new songs here as well, written by the original play's songwriter Stephen Schwartz. I feel like those definitely could have stood out a bit more. Don't get me wrong, they were fine enough, they do serve their purpose in the story, but they definitely could have had more of a chance to shine. But I think that is made up for by how well performed it all is. Obviously, the acting is great. Cynthia Erivo is really good once again as Elphaba, who's very much does not give up on her mission to do what she believes is the right thing, even if it means everyone else just will keep hating her more. I think she is great here, as is Ariana Grande as Glinda, who very much has to grapple with the complicated reality of getting everything she wants and her public image. It's a very, very compelling turn, and it is very much her story this time around. I think she really sells it, particularly when her and Erivo are on screen together. Obviously, their pairing was a highlight of part one, and once again, it really shines here as well. And of course, their singing performances are both great as well. Of course, we have a lot of the returning supporting characters from part one, including Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, who's now a sort of captain in the Emerald City Guard, leading the charge to find Elphaba and bring her in. But also, deep down, actually wants to protect her as he cares about her. And he's charismatic, as you'd expect. Ethan Slater as Boq actually does step up a fair bit this time around as well, with a bit more of a sense of authority. He is really good here. Michelle Yeoh is back as Madame Morrible, and for what she has, she's fine. She does do a decent enough job, but again, she doesn't have a whole lot to work with here, so yeah, it's kind of clipping her wings a bit. We also have the new addition of Coleman Domingo as the Cowardly Lion in a small role. He does do a good job selling the lion's quite timid nature. But of course, the standout of the film, it's no surprise to learn, is Jeff Goldblum as the Wizard of Oz. I mean, Once again, such an inspired casting choice. It just fits like a glove. He's so, like, just charming and likable. Playing a character who is, let's be real, a bit of a charismatic con man. But, because it's Goldblum, you just kind of can't help but love him. And he does have a bit more screen time here as well. So, we do get more chances to see Goldblum just doing his thing. He's great and wonderful. Now, of course, this goes to some quite interesting places here. Obviously, yes, as I mentioned earlier, it ties into the original film and actually does quite interesting attempts at reframing the story of that film from the perspective of this one, exploring those beats in a whole new light. I think definitely how you react to that depends on how on board you are with this story, but I think it is very interesting and works well for what the film is going for, and it also gets to some quite unexpected and emotional reveals that actually do hit very hard. Even if the film, in its final moments, does suffer from having multiple endings, as obviously it's trying to tie together part one and the original Wizard of Oz film, and also trying to conclude this story, so it does have a bit of a juggling act that it kind of struggles with, but the emotional beats do land in quite satisfying fashion, and so does round out this story on a mostly positive note. Overall, Wicked for Good is a darker and surprisingly emotionally compelling conclusion to the Wicked story. Obviously, it has its structural issues that I think prevents it from flying high as it could, but as a conclusion to the story, I think it's very enjoyable, and fans and casuals alike will find something to like in it. Out of 10, Wicked for Good gets a 7. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Wicked for Good? What did you think of it? Are you a fan of the stage show, or are you a newcomer? I'd definitely like to hear both perspectives. What did you make of it in comparison to part one, and what do you think of its future Oscar chances? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.